Hey everybody, Rob Orgel with Silencer Syndicate, and in today's video we're going to look at the UXR as far as a suppressor host goes. Now, full disclosure, back at the East Valley Tactical Suppressed Range Day, we had a really great time, and in fact, we decided this stole the show. It was one of our favorite devices, suppressors, rifles, all included. It was our favorite of all the things we saw at the East Valley Tactical event. Now, when they handed me the rifle, I kind of gave it a wiggle and said, something's loose here. They pulled out some Allen keys, tightened things down because there's a screw that came loose. In events like that, there's a lot of rounds being fired. There's kind of a torture test going on by default, and finding those little loose pieces so that they can correct it so that people don't think it sucks is kind of important. Well, unfortunately, once I got mine, as excited as I was, right away, I found that loose part, and I figured, well, okay, maybe it's the same screw that came loose. So I took it all apart, tightened everything down, still no luck. So what I found is that there's some wiggle from left to right, and then inside the stock with its retractable piece, that too has wiggle. So I found 2 points of wiggle that, you know, it's just me nitpicking, it's not that big of a deal, but I wish that that wasn't the case. I wish this was a little bit more robust. As far as the suppressor host goes, it has that thread over the top. They call it like the Plan B or the Xeno, and it's the standard normal thread, not the reverse thread. And underneath, they hid their muzzle device for recoil reduction. So what I found initially once I got this thing home and put it on the workbench is that the muzzle device they used is long enough to cause a whole lot of problems. So I ended up poking around and finding one of the mounts that gave me just enough room from the mount to the blast baffle so that I could mount certain suppressors on it. And then I just screwed it on and tightened it like too much so it would stay on there. This is the 14.5 pin and weld. So just kind of be cognizant that, the zilch and some of the lower profile mounts might contact that first baffle and therefore not screw all the way in. So I ended up using, who's these guys? This is the Siege. Siege is now making their own muzzle devices and mounts, and theirs gave me just enough length to make this work. So just kind of be aware of that. If you get the 16-inch, you won't have that problem. If you get the 14.5 pinned, know that you need a little bit of extra clearance to get clear of that first blast baffle. Next is the charging handle. I think they placed it forward, which is great because that AR-15 gas to the nose kind of sucks. And in the first several rounds, you can see there's some oil buildup back here. I got in a couple hundred rounds through this thing yesterday. Identified a few more problems and a few more, luxuries, let's call them. But the charging handle location ergonomically makes sense, but my hand kind of sits in that spot, so that's, kind of a plus or minus. It's very easy to swap that. And outside of that, we really like it. There's been a couple little gripes, but we really like it. It's got that skinny XM8 kind of feel to it. The stock folds, it retracts nice and tight the way I like it. And then I took it out to 550 yards. I put a 3X behind it. And it just rang steel over and over and over. Really a great shooter. Another pro/con is the trigger. Looks like they used a TriggerTech Trigger, and it's light, it's soft, but the trigger reset is extremely light. You can almost not feel trigger reset. And that's, to me, that's kind of a gripe, but at least they put an aftermarket trigger in here. You don't spend $2,000+ and get a mil spec trigger that you have to change out. So it was nice of them to do that. I just, personally like the Geisley a little bit more. But now let's talk a little bit more about why this rifle is so significant. And it's the caliber conversion kits. It's that they're coming out with, you can SBR this yourself, that you can make this into a 6.5 Creedmoor, a 308. So many options are available for this weapon. And I think that's one of the main things that make it shine to many. But for me, I like it really as a 5.56. Sure, when 308 stuff comes out, I'll test it. But I really like this as a 5.56 weapon. A couple other little features that are fun to note is the full ambidextrous lower receiver. So you've got the bolt catch and release on both sides. So you can do it with either hand. You've got the safety on both sides. And, true to the way people like to do it, there's a short throw on the right and a long throw on the left, more specifically designed for righties. But as a lefty, I find it's very tactile. Even though it's very small, it works great. The magazine release is on both sides. The bolt catch is on both sides. So just truly a well thought out rifle with QDs built into the butt of the stock area and on the small of the stock area, with none up front, so you'd have to install your own. But one more cool feature I wanted to make mention of before we get to rocket and you get to see kind of how this thing operates is that they have their short barrel right here going from their evac forward to their suppressor mount, and then they've got their gas system with a 3-position gas setting. Setting 1 is standard, setting 2 is suppressed, and setting 3, it toggles from side to side. Setting 3 to the right gives you overgas so that when you have adverse, super dirty, that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, what I found so far, and we'll test a few more silencers today, is that in the suppressor setting, it knocks down a lot of gas. So if you're a full back pressure suppressor, I mean, no surprise, PWS designed it for their PWS BDE 556 suppressor. So no surprise that that's a full back pressure suppressor. So they choke off a ton of gas in the suppressed setting. In the plus setting, they're giving you a little bit more gas. What does that mean for me? Well, that means on the Print-XH Compact Suppressor, which is an extremely low back pressure suppressor, I have to leave it in the unsuppressed setting. And that gives me a little bit more gas, but it's a minute amount. Any of the other medium to low back pressure suppressors, you end up getting that extra gas rather than be able to choke off a small percentage of gas. You know, the way it tends to go is with 3 settings. It's not a suppressor that's low back pressure, a suppressor that's medium back pressure, and a suppressor that's low back pressure or high back pressure. It only does suppressed, unsuppressed at first. And you know, in my perfect world of what Rob wants, it would be really cool if there was suppressed for full back pressure and suppressed for low back pressure suppressors. So one more malfunction I found yesterday, and I'll see if we can simulate it today, but it was from a BCM magazine. It was kind of a failure to feed type of issue. See where I hide my magazines, threw a bunch in different pockets here because I like to be left-handed. All right, so to start, I've got some soft point 64 grain 223 rounds, and we're in the standard setting. I've got obviously the Print-XH Compact Titanium on the end here. Here we go. You can see, even though it's a piston gun, I'm ejecting slightly forward. When I put it in the low back pressure setting, it begins to eject toward the ideal position, but then sometimes the trigger won't reset. In other words, it won't cycle all the way, and it won't give me last round hold open, so I have to leave in that full gas setting. Hit that steel target. And we've got hold open, and you can see there's really very little gas making its way to me. And I think that has a lot to do with the sealed system on the tail end here, and it's piston, so it's bleeding off a lot of gas up here. It's keeping the gas contained. You saw in last round hold open, there's a little bit of kind of a smoke clearing out. Really quite ideal. All right, switch magazines into, what's my next flavor of ammo? This is that BCM magazine I mentioned before. That was giving me a little bit of trouble yesterday. Let's see if it does the same things today. Yep, that's the malfunction it gave me yesterday. I'll hold tight so we can get a little bit of a close-up on that. And what seems to be happening is as it's feeding that round, it's like the magazine is sitting a little too low, or it's just not grabbing that round from the ass end, and it's grabbing from the middle. And then it compressed the bullet into the casing, making it a round we can no longer shoot. And that's weird because BCM is making GI pattern magazines with, you know, the steel or aluminum or whatever body they're using. We shouldn't be seeing these kind of issues. I have not seen this issue at all with the Magpul stuff. It's really just the BCM. So let's clear this malfunction. Yep, same thing as yesterday. Compresses that bullet back. Let's see if I can get it to happen again. Yet again, same malfunction. So kind of frustrating. Let's call that a mag issue. It's not an old mag. It is a new mag, but you know, I guess it just doesn't like those metal body magazines. Now let's dump that guy. And that's the normal ammunition that you all know I like using. And that's the PMC X-TAC 55 grain full metal jacket boat tail. And then I also ran a bunch of the green tip stuff yesterday, and that stuff ran obviously flawlessly. And with a medium back pressure suppressor, because this has a higher chamber pressure, I was able to put it in the suppressed setting with the higher pressured rounds of the green tip. And that gave me pretty reliable cycling. So if you're running a high pressure round and a medium back pressure suppressor, you're pretty much good to go. If you're running a high back pressure suppressor, then it kind of doesn't matter what ammunition you use because you're gaining that extra back pressure. So you can leave it in the suppressed setting. And you can see I'm ejecting a little bit more far forward now, and that's just because of the higher pressured 5.56 green tip ammunition. Overall, really like the recoil impulse, very smooth shooter. Again, my big gripes are going to be, I'll go ahead and clear this out before I break down my big gripes. My big gripes are going to be, as a suppressor host, it really likes a full back pressure suppressor in order to put it into the suppressor setting. The medium to low back pressure suppressors really don't have a setting on this platform, so you end up having to leave the full gas setting, which gives you a little bit of that, you know, reduced compared to not having it at all, but you know, no mitigation really for that medium back pressure style suppressor. In the unsuppressed setting, it runs totally reliably without a suppressor. Really no complaints there. I've not used the adverse gas setting for anything. I haven't found a need for it. Perhaps as it gets dirtier, maybe I'm about 1,000 rounds into this rifle. As it starts getting dirtier, maybe we'll need to try that adverse setting. But so far, flawless gun, runs 100%. It just doesn't like BCM magazines, and it wants either a full back pressure suppressor or it wants to be left in the standard setting with a medium to low back pressure suppressor. Biggest gripe so far really is in the stock. I just wish this had a better lockup to it. And that's just me being nitpicky. My second biggest gripe on this is going to be the muzzle device. They had to make it 16 inches because of laws in America. So when they pinned and welded, they used kind of a longer muzzle device. I wish that they had used a slightly shorter one, or maybe they had gone with like a, I don't know, a slightly longer barrel length to make it more suppressor friendly and more mount friendly. As I mentioned before, there was a handful of mounts that just would not pair with several silencers. So just be cognizant of that when you're picking out your rifle and pairing it with your suppressors. Guys, if you like this content, as always, please like, subscribe. You've really done a lot of good for us in the support in that comment section, and sharing these videos with mom and buddies and all that good stuff really goes a long way to help our channel grow. We appreciate you guys, and as always, stay safe.